All right, we're excited for everyone who's beginning to join us. We'll give a moment and then we're going to begin this great celebration. We have an all-star cast that was impossible to choose from. Some people are making up grades from their St. Andrews years with their performances tonight. All right, so let's get going because we've got a lot of great words to be spoken and pictures to be seen and perhaps even a few tunes to carry us through. There's lots of laughter awaiting Tad and Elizabeth and probably a few good tears. And while we may have a script of some sort, I think it's gonna just go in wild directions. We are here to express our love and joy and appreciation to you. We are coming to you from the United States. We have at least one person across the Atlantic Ocean in Eric Botang. We're not sure if he's in England or France or Germany, but it's at least almost sunrise wherever he is. And we appreciate him being up this late for us. So we're going to begin with Charlotte Burrell reading some remarks that her grandmother, Joni O'Brien, has written. And we'll start there. Charlotte, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm Charlotte. I am class of 2017, and I was also Mrs. Roach's advisee. I am also the granddaughter of John O'Brien, the previous headmaster, as well as John O'Brien, and I am speaking for her tonight. In the fall of 1996, John organized a retreat to the Aspen Institute in Maryland. He invited several teachers to speak about their subjects and what they were doing in class. At one point, following the talks, a very savvy trustee, who was clearly a mind reader, said to John, "You know, John, you can't choose your successor." John just smiled. Obviously, John and I had spoken about his decision to retire sometime in the near future and how great it would be if Tad became the next headmaster. This talk went on for a couple of months, leading up to a special meeting with the board. About 2 days before the meeting, we went out on our walk with Scott and Emma, when John slapped his head with his hand and said, "Oh gosh, I've never spoken to Tad about this." Our walk ended immediately and John left to speak to Tad. So that December, John and I met with the Board of Trustees at the Hotel DuPont. Previously, all board meetings had been at the school, but this was special. At this meeting, John announced to the board that he was planning to retire a year and 1/2 from then. Following his announcement, John listed the many reasons why Tad should succeed him. That savvy trustee was also in the room. Then John and I went upstairs and had lunch. By dessert, we knew that the board had voted to ask Tad to be the next head of St. Andrews. Tad and Elizabeth have been amazing. We all know what a great job they have done. On a personal note, Elizabeth has been 2 of our 4 granddaughters' advisor. And our oldest grandgirl, who is not her advisee, said she couldn't get through her senior year unless Elizabeth was her teacher. I mentioned this to Elizabeth. Elizabeth smiled and said she thought she could work something out. Our daughter Lou is a graduate and now a member of the faculty. So on a very personal note, the Roaches have had a huge influence on our family. I thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Have a great retirement. We love you.
Hi, my name is Gary Clark. I am the class of 1985. I was also an advisee of Mr. Roach. For almost 40 years, I've been carrying this guilt. I had denied Mrs. Roach the opportunity to fully enjoy her evenings and weekends while I was a student. You have to understand, I came out of the New York City public school system where we, the students, were oftentimes a burden to the teachers who couldn't wait for the 3 p.m. bell to ring so that they can be on their merry way. Not all of my public school teachers were like that, but I spent my time gravitating towards the few who really wanted us to succeed. The year was 1982, and I had my mind set on going to the Fiorello LaGuardia High School for Music and Art. But I must thank my parents for recognizing that my level of talent in the arts would not have been adequate enough for me to independently sustain myself. They made the very hard decision to send me to St. Andrews while my friends went on to music and art and other New York City public schools. When I arrived at St. Andrews, it became quite apparent that there were areas that I needed to improve upon, one of them being English. And Mrs. Roach was going to ensure that she covered those areas, even if it meant tutoring me on evenings and weekends. Remember, in New York City public schools, teachers weren't interested in spending any more time with their students than necessary. Mrs. Roach was interested in spending time to ensure that I received the knowledge necessary to make it in this world. At the time, I felt that I impeded on her personal time, but it wasn't until about 2 years ago at a St. Andrews function on Park Avenue here in New York that I was informed by a very reliable source, her daughter, Hadley, that Mrs. Roach may have enjoyed these sessions way more than I ever did. Today, I no longer carry that guilt, and I hope that every teacher at St. Andrews has the same level of dedication to each and every student that comes through that beautiful campus. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done for me and others like me. When I first heard that the Roaches were retiring from St. Andrews, let me back up. When I first heard that Mr. Spears was retiring from St. Andrews, I was so sad because he was a pillar, a familiar face I would randomly see when stopping by after graduating. On one such trip, I photographed Mr. Spears when he was acting head of school while the Roaches were on sabbatical. My concern was that when Mr. Spears retired, it would have a domino effect, especially after seeing all his wonderful adventures on Instagram. My first impulse was to ask myself, who will I see on a random Saturday morning trip to St. Andrews? Who will now step up and provide safe haven for students of color? These were just a few of my own selfish thoughts. I know I don't have to worry. My classmate Dale has a daughter currently at St. Andrews, and he's been telling me about all the wonderful new teachers that are there today. I know St. Andrews will be in good hands because of the foundation that the Roaches have set to ensure that St. Andrews continues to be a place that will forever change people's lives like my own. A few months ago, a few alumni from various classes had a Zoom session with the Roaches. When it was my turn to speak, I realized that as I was talking about them, reflecting on how they affected me, I started to choke up. It wasn't easy for me to talk about how they had such an impact on my life. I felt my voice tremble just trying to maintain composure.
My name is
Why was this happening?
You are admitted, obviously. This is just stating your medication.
Mr. and Mrs. Roach, you are one of the very few people who have taken up permanent residency in my heart and mind. I can honestly say that when I was asked to prepare something for this evening, it was one of the hardest things to do. It was hard because how does one articulate how two people manage to change the trajectory of a person's destiny in such a positive and meaningful way in words? My parents still talk about you to this day and praise St. Andrews for molding me into the person that I am. And for that, I thank you.
My name is Emer O'Dwyer, and first, it's lovely to see you, Tad and Elizabeth. How very lovely it is, and let me echo Gary's comment that I am deeply honored to have been asked to be part of this select few, and I know that there are many out there listening who wish you could say all your things. So I do carry a great feeling of appreciation for letting my voice be heard at this very special moment. As I said, my name is Emer O'Dwyer, class of '92, and I teach now at Oberlin College in Japanese history.
Megan, for the visitor.
Hello. So let me begin my remarks. In the last year or so, I've had a recurring dream in which I'm back at St. Andrews in my mid-40s because some shadowy authorities whom I can never quite identify, you know how dreams are, have determined that I need more credits or something even though I've long since earned my BA, MA, and PhD, all from Harvard. The dream typically peters out as I try to navigate a changed SAS, in which the campus has almost been completely transformed and oddly appears, I warned you this is a dream, and oddly appears in my dream-fogged mind as a cross between Club Med and Bergdorf Goodman. Each time I chalk it up to a stress dream of a kind, but lately I see something else in it too, and it's related to the Roaches. Tad and Elizabeth's English classes were for me a place of familiarity and comfort. I loved the materiality of the spaces, those bright classrooms framed by burnished wood and the artful clutter of walls adorned with portraits of great writers, as well as the materiality of the texts in hand, the green and white paperback Riverside edition of Middlemarch, and to the chalky mist arising from the blackboard, product of Tad's furious hand. My memory, true or not, is that Elizabeth was too refined for blackboards and their effluvia, something I've grown to share because frankly, it just gets caught in your throat and then you can't talk. That's a practical point. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. The combined effect, at any rate, was the conviction that literature was as much a welcoming space to inhabit as the classroom itself. In Elizabeth and Tad's presentation, literature was presented as an essential part of life. It was thrilling to behold and hold in hand, both for what each great work could give you individually, as well as what abundance of meaning could be gathered across a lifetime when one properly and regularly immersed oneself in a wealth of genres and traditions. While I understood well at the time that E&T regarded literature as serious business, it was just 4 summers ago that this understanding hit me with renewed force, thanks to the following passage I came across in poet James Lasdoon's memoir, Give Me Everything You Have. Lasdoon writes, in the old East Germany, a person who helped others escape over the wall was called a Fluchthelfer, a flight helper. If you read naively, as I mostly do, Lasdoon continues, to make sense of your life rather than for more sophisticated aesthetic or scholarly reasons, then certain writers inevitably become your own Fluchthelfer, helping you over your own walls, whether to escape reality, or as I prefer to see it, to find your way into it. As with certain writers, so with certain teachers. Thank you, Elizabeth and Tad, for your utter devotion to pulling us all up and over. In your wisdom, you knew that life would throw us curveballs and difficult pitches. And so you began the work of showing us where the help was and how to access it. And so it is, and let me just say, and I didn't put this in my written remarks because I feared that I would trip and fumble, but I haven't tripped and fumbled yet, so here it goes. I've lost my dear father in the last 2 months. And literature has been what's helped me. And so it is that I find myself dreaming in midlife for the enforced return to St. Andrews and the Roaches spaces. But you're leaving. Save room on your bookshelf in your new home for the books I can't wait to tell you about. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Emir.
Emir. That was just amazing. Go ahead, Everett.
So Emir, sorry, truly sorry for your loss. Truly sorry for your loss. Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband, I'm sorry I missed you a couple of weeks ago. Hope possibly you heard about it. I was there for an impromptu, but I did try to seek you out because I wanted to say in person what I don't have time to say because I'm limited to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. I'm going to go over that. I'll tell you now. So, but in any case, when I was considering what I'd say tonight in tribute and recognition of these 2 special people, I decided to address their hows and not their whats. The list of whats that they have accomplished in their combined over 80 years of service is truly noteworthy, but for me, it's their hows that is most impressive. How have they been able to consistently provide high quality value add to the many and varied St. Andrews stakeholders for so many years? How Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband deliver the whats. They have been consistently surrounded by high quality, empowered individuals and subject matter experts who are and share their values. From Mark 10, verse 45, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. They are sincere in their commitment to serving others. Colossians 3:23, whatever they do it enthusiastically as something done for the Lord and not for men. Philippians 2, verses 3-4, they do nothing out of rivalry or conceit, but in humility, they consider others more important than themselves. They not only look out for their own interests, but also the interest of others. And of course, 1 Corinthians 13, they know that if they do not have love, they are nothing. They characteristically exemplify love in their interactions with others. Their love is patient, kind, does not know envy, is not boastful, is not conceited, does not act improperly, and is not selfish. These hows are an integral part of who they are, their being, their character, and these hows facilitate and enable the accomplishment of their many whats. These words from Elizabeth's husband give me great joy. Quote, we are a school intent on exploring and celebrating the diversity of the 21st century and affirming that in diversity, we can come together in affirmation and defense of the great truths of 21st century life, the power of hope, the power of love, the power of empathy, the power of grace, the power of service, and the power of generosity. During the COVID-19 shelter-in-place restrictions, I reached out and engaged my SAS classmates in some uncharacteristically deep online discussions. In parallel, I also engaged about 20 plus of my 34th Company Naval Academy classmates in similar online discussions. I began the online dialogues to foster open communication and to share some things that I have experienced as a Black man, hoping that with an increased awareness of what Black Americans are and have been enduring, then each of my classmates going forward would be better able to make a positive impact on race relations within their spheres of influence. And I'll share, for those of you who don't know, I was the only Black in my class of 73 and the only surviving African American in my Naval Academy class of 77, the company that I was in, company 34th Company. I began the online discussions, again, as I said, to foster dialogues and communications and to share some things that basically I've been living in a white world since 10th grade, and a lot of the people I've run across had, I was the first Black person they really spent a lot of time with. Surprisingly and sadly, the online engagement with my Naval Academy classmates did not go well. After the police officer was convicted of murder in the George Floyd case, one of my classmates expressed his lengthy opinion on why the officer did not receive a fair trial, saying, quote, it looks like a high-tech lynching to an outsider, end quote. I feel strongly that in a group of 20 plus people, there's something so not right when the Black guy, me, is the only one to openly take issue with these expressed opinions. And I quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. In contrast, the online engagement with my SAS classmates has been rewarding and therapeutically uplifting. And we've touched on, trust me guys, January 6th, the politics, presidential politics of last year, racism, even diversity in private schools, teaching of diversity in private schools. So Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband, because of the living legacy that you have both put in place, tomorrow's St. Andrews is well positioned to surpass even today's benchmark for excellence. In a couple of years, as the class of 2023 graduates, the class of 1973, my class, will mark the passing of 50 years since our graduation. I am teary-eyed happy when I think of how the class of 23 will go out into the world and not remain silent about things that matter. In 2073, as they approach the 50-year anniversary of their graduation, they most certainly will have had a positive impact on their world, and they will be experiencing the rewarding and therapeutically uplifting feeling that comes from having stayed engaged with each other for 50 years. It's a good feeling, right, Ed? Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband, in case you haven't figured it out by now, Elizabeth is getting top billing. I just thought for 40 plus years, I know this because I was married to Patricia for 30 years and I've been married to Deidre for 10 years. When I was in the Marine Corps, Patricia was Captain McNair's husband. And once I got out, I was always introduced as, and everybody would say, oh, you're Patricia McNair's husband. Oh, you're Patricia. So Elizabeth, tonight it's all about you. Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband, I close with, thank you for making a difference. Thank you both for being you. Know that you are loved. May God continue to bless you and your family as you enter your next season.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's wonderful to be here with you tonight. Thank you for the organizers of the event tonight for including me. This is a great opportunity. So my name is Beth Martin, and I'm speaking to you live from Baltimore, Maryland. I graduated in 2009. So I'd like to now, and I'd like you all to get ready to enter your answers into the chat. I'm going to read 5 quotes from chapel talks given by either Tad or Elizabeth. And in the chat, I want you to guess who gave the talk and what year they gave it. All right, first quote. We perhaps are not even aware of what we take away from our lives, our experience here, because this empathetic lens becomes the way we automatically understand people, the way we live, the way we experience the world around us. I have realized that the reason I have been so awed by so many alumni in the past year is that I have seen and talked to people living their lives with this very lens. It is a subtle, intangible, almost imperceptible, but incredibly powerful lens. You guys got to guess quick because I got a time limit. Thank you, Mr. Spears, for that. And the answer is Elizabeth, March 17th, 2010. Next quote. But I also realized that we should keep a literal or figurative error notebook in the most important course we all, young and old, are taking, the course on life. Do we have the courage to recognize and acknowledge our mistakes and errors? Once we admit our mistakes, do we have the courage both to analyze and interpret the root cause of our shortcomings? And do we have resolve to improve, develop, and inspire change in ourselves? That one, Tad, November 7th, 2007. Next one. St. Andrews has connected powerful teaching and learning to the experience and responsibility of living in a country, a world, a school of diversity, and we have committed to human rights, human dignity, radical listening, open mind school forums, and a community service ethic and visiting speaker program that inspires us not to hide from, but rather embrace the world. Tad, September 15th, 2019. 2 more. We can only know ourselves if we look outside of ourselves. If we constantly examine our feelings, taking our own pulse all the time, am I happy? What do I need? How am I doing? Why am I unhappy? Without a larger perspective, without a larger context, we will stunt ourselves. We will miss understanding ourselves. We run the danger of an egotism, which leads to blindness and distortion, rather than clarity. Elizabeth, in May of 1998. Last one. I understood that my vision and the faculty's vision for St. Andrews as a school, as a home, as a place of transformation, scholarship, inquiry, and debate, as a community united by courage, integrity, and honesty, as a school of social activism, service, and compassion, would live on in the hearts and minds of this class. And I knew I and the faculty could one day leave the school in their capable and creative hands. Tad, May 21st, 2006. Do you think you'd be around for another 15 years, Tad? All right. Seemed like it was preemptive to me. All right. So, besides being a fun game, why did I bring up all these incredible excerpts that Tad and Elizabeth had written over the last several decades? I'm not going to pretend to be an Elizabeth Roach level English student, so allow me a rough transition. I listened to a podcast called The Daily by the New York Times. There's one particular episode from December 2020 that I love and I've listened to a few times about Delilah, the radio host. I hope you've all heard Delilah. She is famous for taking calls, talking to people about their personal, very relatable issues, and playing popular music, and has been on the air for, coincidentally, over 40 years. Please give this episode of The Daily and Delilah a listen. Near the end of the episode, spoiler alert, the radio host says about Delilah, she sounds the same. Nothing about what Delilah is doing has changed, but everything else feels so profoundly different. So that in this moment, this super simple thing that she's been doing for decades, it feels in its sincerity radical, to just listen to people, to perform the most essential act of love, giving people attention. This thing that she's always understood that she wanted and she needed. Right now, it's almost subversive in its earnestness. Now, I'm not saying that what Tad and Elizabeth have been doing for the last 40 plus years has been super simple, but I hope you'll agree that the message they've spread has been consistent. And at the risk of not giving them enough credit for their personal and professional growth in that time, the 1998 Elizabeth sounds like the 2009 Elizabeth, sounds like the 2006 Tad, sounds like the 2019 Tad. The message of love, unity, diversity, compassion, and engagement has remained the same. And they've continued to provide a similar radical act of love, teaching, learning, faithfully leading our community to be better and do better. This message has resonated with 40 plus years of St. Andrews students, proven by the attendance here tonight. So I hope you'll allow me to raise a toast to Tad and Elizabeth, the Delilah of St. Andrews. Thank you for everything you've done for me, the class of 2009, and every student that's been a part of your time at St. Andrews. We love you.
All right, so one of the disadvantages of not going first is you hear a lot of your themes that you want to express already expressed, and unfortunately for me, far more eloquently than I could ever do. My name is Jonathan Banks. I'm St. Andrews class of 1988. And when I arrived at St. Andrews in 1984, it was my first time setting foot on campus. I had gone to a school I'd come from a school that was, I think, 98% Black, and very public and not great, from Mississippi. And so it was not the most comfortable experience for me setting foot on campus. The very first friendly face I saw was Will Spears. And it was Will who made me feel comfortable and at home right away. But next in line were Tad and Elizabeth. Tad and Elizabeth provided a haven for students of color to gather together. And after a very rough first week at St. Andrews, where I had a roommate who was telling off-color jokes that didn't go over well, I went to this Friday gathering and talked about it. And my heroes, my idols from St. Andrews, Gary and Dale and Stacy, heard me loud and clear. And all I know is Stacy said she would take care of it, and it was taken care of. And so I thank Gary and Dale and Stacy for that, but I thank Tad and Elizabeth for providing the forum for a little third former like me to get to know these great seniors, and form these bonds that helped get me through St. Andrews and help me get other students through St. Andrews. But it's not just that. I was, Tad was my advisor, and then Elizabeth was my advisor. But I also had Tad as an English teacher, and I can say he was one of the most impactful teachers I ever had. I did not have a strong foundation in English. I floundered for 2 years before Tad sat me down on his couch night after night, and similar to, I guess, to the way Elizabeth did with Gary, tutored me and taught me that I was smart and I did understand it, and like that, I took off after that, and I can't thank Tad enough. But I also benefited from just being around them, and being a part of their family, like overhearing the Montesano sisters grill Tad about everything from, you know, the virtues of the last name Roach to who knows what. But I carry that with me to this day, and it's a very big part of who I am. Tad he's friendly, approachable, and committed, not just to students of color, not just to students, but to the school, and that was always clear, and something I always admired about him, and tireless. Like, I don't know where the energy came from, to tutor, to care, to day after day, night after night, fight the fight, to make the school a better place. When I was thinking about adjectives for Elizabeth, the only, not the only thing, but the one thing that really came to mind was tenacious. She's lovely, she's nice, all these great things, but like it took work to build a relationship with Elizabeth, because Elizabeth, at least Elizabeth I know, was not just going to like take anybody in. Like, you had to prove yourself to her, and once you did, and once she opened up, it was such a beautiful thing, and I really cherish the relationship I was able to have with her, especially, and she's just so genuine, and you always know where you stand with her, and if you do something to displease her, she will let you know. I forgot her birthday once, and I will never forget November 17th ever again. I made the mistake of referring to her firstborn as Matt, not Matthew. That happened one time. She let me know, and the lesson came across. I also have to thank Tad, because as brilliant as Tad is in English, he's not that great at putting stuff together. So when Tad and Elizabeth bought something that needed to be put together, I got to do it. So I honed my IKEA furniture construction skill. So thank you, Tad, for that. I'm sure you had no idea you were teaching shop at St. Andrews. So St. Andrews was not always an easy place to be at that time for me, but through Tad's commitment, Elizabeth's tenaciousness, the tireless effort Tad puts in, and just Elizabeth being so genuine, they have together at the helm of St. Andrews turned it into a place, or helped it grow into a place where hopefully they don't need those Friday gatherings anymore. A place where I could send my children and feel sure that they are going to get not just an excellent education, but learn a great deal about life, and And Tad and Elizabeth, I can't thank you enough for all you've done for me and the St. Andrews community. I love you. You will be missed. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm up. Hi, everyone. My name is Lois Kim, also known as Lolo, and I was an English teacher at St. Andrews from 1990 to 1993. And my kids also both went and go to St. Andrews. My daughter Sylvia graduated in 2019, advisee of Elizabeth, and my son Nate is just a rising senior, also advisee of Elizabeth, part of the Roach Gang. Okay, so I'm going to share a few photos from the early 90s. When I was at St. Andrews and Tad and Elizabeth took me under their wing, we were fellow Buffalonians, even though I didn't know them in Buffalo, and I came to teach at St. Andrews right out of college. Tad and Elizabeth, I feel like you guys were always amused by the young faculty member shenanigans. Not that you were old at that time, and played along. So I'm going to share my screen. Are you a little nervous? Okay. So I am trying to share my screen, but maybe I'm being disabled from sharing my screen, and I need a host to let me share my screen. Uh-oh. Tech support. Is it possible? Okay, great. All right, I'm in business. Can you guys all see this? All right, so here's a picture of Tad and Elizabeth from Mel Bride's wedding. I love this picture of you guys. And I included it because I feel like you guys have borne witness to so many St. Andreans getting hitched. And I love this photo. This next photo is from a 70s costume party the faculty had at Gail LeBlanc's house. I seem to recall that Brad Bates, who's on this call, and Nell Brown raided the theater department for costumes so that they could be Captain and Tennille, and the rest of us hit a Goodwill in Wilmington. This photo to me confirms, and should for all of you, that Elizabeth's style icon status was alive and real then and continues to this day. Not pictured here was like a fabulous faux fur jacket to complete her impeccable 70s outfit. I also want you all to know, literally for days, how desperately I looked for the photo of Tad from this party in a brown polyester 70s shirt, and how depressed I was when I couldn't find it, as it would have been the only extant documentation of polyester touching the skin of Tad Roach. Next photo. Here's a photo of Elizabeth dancing at an end of year faculty party with Spanish teacher Timothy Young after all the students had left. It's not a great photo, but it captures like Elizabeth's, you know, always ready to dance. I think that was on the trivia quiz. As you can see, Tad is nowhere to be found and was probably reading and planning for the next school year in his office. Every year since I left St. Andrews nearly 30 years ago, I would get a Christmas card from Tad and Elizabeth with a loving note. I would get the card in Elizabeth's familiar handwriting, as any student who's experienced the marginal notes from Mrs. Roach on an English paper will recognize. I am terrible with Christmas cards, but you all, thank you for never cutting me from your list. I loved seeing every addition to the Roach clan through the years. And the cards were like a string of light, connecting me to you both, and to St. Andrews always. What's so incredible is how many others you also kept connected to you and to the school in so many personal and authentic ways. Like all of you guys here listening today and watching, you know, I wanted to be a member of this family, and Tad and Elizabeth, in your seemingly infinite capacity to treat everyone like family and members, you obliged, so thank you. And also for including my kids. I was not gonna cry. Sylvia, Nate, and all the SAS kids in your family. Thanks, and for all the Roach kids who are listening in, thanks for sharing your parents with us. Love you guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Colon, class of 1987. I was also one of Tad's advisees. I had Elizabeth as an English teacher. Stacy was my big sister. So I've just written a little letter to Tad and Elizabeth. Dear Tad and Elizabeth, what can you say about two people who have had so much influence, not just in my own life, but that of so many others? I guess a good place as any to start is by saying thank you. Thank you for always having your door open and allowing me the opportunity to vent, to be sad, to be angry, to be happy, but most importantly, to just be. Thank you for seeing possibilities and qualities in me that I didn't know were there and encouraging me to continue striving, even though many times I thought I'd fail. You may not actually remember, but thank you for saying that my lasagna in 5th form, the first one I'd ever done on my own, was really good, even if it wasn't. And for letting me help with the boys' basketball team and make brownies for the games, since my own basketball skills were sorely lacking. Thank you for inviting me to participate in various SAS events over the last 30 years and seeking my thoughts and inputs for how things could be done better at the school. Finally, thank you for inspiring me to be the person I am today. One that I think is better for having role models like the two of you in their life. You've dedicated most of your lives to St. Andrews, raising your own family there and shaping the SAS family in the vision of a place that would be known not only for rigorous academic standards, but for nurturing a student body that was thoughtful, caring, diverse, and inclusive. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. Your legacy will undoubtedly live on, and while you've left the school in some very capable hands, and you deserve to go off and enjoy the next phase of your lives, I hope you won't completely say goodbye to this community you've created. Wishing you both the very, very best. Lots of love, Christy.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. I'm RJ Beach, class of 1982. Played a little soccer for Tad and Will and some basketball as well. Thanks for asking me to speak tonight. It's very, feel very honored to do so. So where do I begin? First of all, let me congratulate Tad and Elizabeth on their retirement. I wish you both many happy and relaxing days ahead. You certainly deserve it. So I think for anyone who chooses teaching or coaching as a career, it's their hope that in some way they make an impression or impact on the lives of some of the young people that they work with. I can only imagine the vast number of lives that Tad and Elizabeth have impacted during their time at SAS. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to share the impact that Tad in particular made in my life. So in the fall of 1980, I made my way onto the campus of St. Andrews as a tall, lanky, incoming junior with a crazy head of hair. One of the first people I met was a teacher who would live on our corridor. He was a tall, lanky guy with an almost equally crazy head of hair. He instantly made me feel welcome. I quickly found out that the other students called him Bug. So for the next 40 years, Bug it would be. The world of sports, both playing it and following it, was my passion. Bug had a similar passion for sports, and we quickly made a connection. At the end of my junior seasons for soccer and basketball, I was thrilled to find out that Bug would be the head coach for both of those teams for my senior year. That soccer season of my senior year was a magical one for the school community, the coaches, the players, and for me in particular. The season began with much anticipation. The previous season ended with a hard-fought double overtime loss to Caesar Rodney High School in the quarterfinals of the state tournament. But we were returning a good number of players in key positions, and with Bug leading the way, we all hoped for something special. We started the season with 4 wins in our first 5 games. Our one loss coming by 1 goal at Westtown to their team that had postgraduates on it. Bug had a way of inspiring our team in a way I'd never experienced. I'd played soccer, basketball, baseball, and swam since I was about 6 years old. And I had many different coaches who back in the late 70s could get away with making players run sprints after practice until someone vomited twice. Bug's motivation was so much different. He made us believe that we were world beaters and that there wasn't a soccer team in the state that could ever beat us if we played to our potential. Now, I'm not really sure how he came up with that conclusion, because looking back on it, we weren't a very skilled soccer team. I think we only had maybe 2 players that played soccer outside of the school season, whereas teams like Concord and Brandywine and others had many players that played soccer year round and possessed a great deal of skill. But we didn't know any better, and if Bug said there was no way we should lose to our opponent, then we were going to make damn sure that we didn't. Bug was not only a terrific motivator, but he was also a master facilitator in making sure the team's needs was met. He had to work hard with the bus company that the school had contracted with to transport the school's athletic teams in order to find a driver who would put up with our loud music, which was somehow played out of 4-foot-high speakers that were so big that each speaker had a bus seat of its own, and also our rowdy behavior. They finally found us an older woman in her 60s that would dress in school colors and drive us down the road, allowing us to blast The Who on volume 11. And I do want to take a second right here too. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the importance that our assistant coach and Bug's partner in crime here, Will Spears, made not only the success of our soccer team, but also to my personal improvement as a goalie, as Will was our goalie coach. So here we were after winning 4 of our first games. We suffered a shocking 2-0 loss to Archmere in our 6th game of the season, which brought home the point that if we weren't playing to our potential, we could actually get beat. Well, the team was more determined than ever to not let that happen again, and we didn't. Our team, which played in a manner more befitting the sound of the nicknames of a few of its players, which were the Rat, Brick, Gomer, we dispensed with the more highly skilled and higher ranked teams in the state playoffs. We began our playoff run by exacting our revenge on Caesar Rodney in the quarterfinals by defeating them 2-0. In the semifinals, we faced the number 1 ranked team in the state, William Penn High. They had only let up 3 goals the entire season. Since we were the second of 2 semifinal games to be played that night, we arrived in the stadium parking lot with the song by The Who Are You?, playing at ear-bleeding levels while the first game was being played. I remember seeing the hundreds of people in the bleachers stand up and look around to see where the music was coming from. We all just looked back at him, kind of nodded our heads and said, yeah, the Saints have arrived. Here we are. We found ourselves down 1-0 at halftime. And I remember Bug telling us at halftime that we had the wind at our backs in the second half and that there was no way they were going to be able to maintain their 1-goal lead. He was right. We scored 2 second-half goals and we were off to the finals. In that final match, we met Concord High, the school I attended as a sophomore, and the school that had won half the state championships in state history. We were heavy underdogs as we were against William Penn, yet Bug had us believing that there was no way we were going to lose that game, and he was right again. We were tied 0-0 at the end of regulation and went on to score 3 goals in overtime to beat my old school by a score of 3-0 and win our first and only boys soccer state title. So how did these experiences impact me, you ask? Well, after graduating University of Delaware with a geography degree, I spent a year selling cars to U.S. military personnel in Germany before coming back to the States and landing a job with a major record company in their sales department. Neither job gave me any sense of fulfillment. As I considered another career change, I thought about my passion for sports and the incredible job that Bug did with our soccer and basketball teams, and thought that maybe I could take that passion and become a coach like Bug. I found a position at Tower Hill as a teacher and a coach, and I have continued in that career for the past 30 years. I now live in Greenville, South Carolina, where my wife and I have raised 2 wonderful children. I've coached over 50 different high school, middle school sports teams in the sports of soccer, baseball, golf, and basketball. I've also served as a high school athletic director for 10 years. I hope that in some way I've made an impact in at least one of my players' lives in the way that Bug made in mine. Tad and Elizabeth, I love you both. Best wishes.
Yes, hello. My name is Dale Forbes, class of '85, parent. I have a fourth former at St. Andrews at the moment. Many of us have fond memories of St. Andrews, and certainly fond memories of Mr. and Mrs. Roach. I remember when I was asked, and it's a great honor, by the way, that I've been asked to participate in this. I sat down one night about 3 weeks ago and I started writing down all of the memories that I had with Mr. and Mrs. Roach. It then sort of, this stream of consciousness became 2,000 plus words, so I can't read them all here. But I think the best thing I can do now is focus on my most cherished memory. I entered St. Andrews in September 1982 as a fourth former. I was fortunate enough to have Mrs. Roach as my English teacher. I was reasonably smart, definitely capable, quite shy, and very much lacked confidence. I remember sitting in her class at the oval table, trying desperately to hide behind my pencil because there was nowhere else left to hide. I was never confident in my answers when called upon, and my preparation was not robust enough. Mrs. Roach picked up on that quickly and offered me extra help outside of her classes. Me being me, I delayed taking her up on the offer until I had no other choice. The extra help was intense. I assumed I needed help interpreting and executing my assignments more thoroughly, but Mrs. Roach immediately determined that I needed more than that. The best way to explain this is that she quickly diagnosed that I needed more than triage, I required surgery. She identified the issues and took action immediately. What was meant to be one after-class meeting turned into a regular daily session plus Saturday. I often wondered to myself, did Mrs. Roach have something else to do, like field hockey practice, grading papers, taking some personal time, teachers meeting, going for a run, anything at all? Whatever else she could have been doing, Mrs. Roach made me feel like she was happy to be spending that time working with me. We went over sentence structure, expression, writing, critical analysis, from the considerably basic to the complex. Before moving from one task to the next, she would say, do it again. And after I did it again, she would say, do it again. Those three words never left my head. I was not permitted to move on until I mastered it, until I consumed every iota of what she was teaching me. With each iteration and after mastering each task, my confidence grew. I began to see the light and understand. I began to think critically and approach things more purposefully. In September of 1982, I thought of myself as capable. By October of 1982, I discovered confidence in myself. Whatever the actual class material was in 1982, what I learned, the transformation that occurred in me, was confidence and purpose. Mrs. Roach did not have to spend hours passing those life skills to me, but she made it her choice and her priority to do so. Getting me through class would have been enough for some, but not for Mrs. Roach. She invested her time to make me better. She gave me a little step stool that I still have to this day, that I pull out and stand on whenever I feel I need it. When I was assigned to Asia in my work in the mid-1990s, I wrote economic commentary via email to the other branches within my organization. Many people would read them when they logged in at the other offices. I remember one colleague commented, "The guy that writes these market updates is so purposeful." When I heard that, I wanted to cry. I was channeling my inner Mrs. Roach without even knowing it. I was gifted this incredible life skill, and it became a part of who I was then and who I am to this day. Mrs. Roach knew way before me that I was capable of so much more, and she pushed me to heights that I never thought I could get to. Do it again became a mantra for me. Look at it, read it, absorb it, critically analyze it, redraft it, be purposeful, be diligent. It's a guiding light. I might not have fully incorporated the life skills that Mrs. Roach passed to me while I was at SAS, but these skills became a part of me throughout my life. And throughout my life, I've been looking for the best way, any possible way at all, to say thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Roach, for what you've done for me. You gave me the building blocks of my SAS career and the building blocks of many things about me. You took the time to help me, be patient with me, and believe in me. You were selfless, and for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Mr. and Mrs. Roach, thank you. Thank you for the 40 plus years of service. Thank you for Thursday nights, sports, advisory, classes, conversations, emails, friendship, compassion, and courage. You've done over and above your best. You've given all of us roadmaps from your soul. It is up to us to keep the torch burning bright. You are forever in our hearts. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Pressman. I'm a current faculty member at St. Andrews. And I have to start tonight with the most recent of anecdotes, which I didn't have time to eloquently weave into the rest of my thoughts. So much for the drafting process that I have seen enacted by my two colleagues here, because it literally happened late last night. I made a request to colleagues over email for someone to help me out with my out and about duty coverage this Friday night, the last night before vacation begins, because I'm woefully behind in the process of packing up my apartment for a Monday move date. Entirely unsurprisingly, who was the first person to reply? Tad Roach, with not one, but two separate emails asserting that not only would he take this duty, but he insisted on taking it so that he could spend every last minute with the kids before they depart Saturday morning. What head of school steps up for late Friday night duty on the last night before vacation? I will say this makes me feel a little guilty to be wearing a Team Elizabeth t-shirt, but what can you do? So this Friday at 10 p.m., I hope everyone pictures Tad in their mind's eye with kids gathered in a circle around him one more time telling stories. Okay, so to what I wrote from before late last night. I vividly remember my first conversation with you, Tad, on a push button landline phone from the tiny Teaching Fellows apartment I was living in at Andover in the winter of 2003. I might have been only a few months into my teaching career, but I figured I knew boarding schools. After all, I had grown up at one, attended one, and was teaching at one. I knew the many reasons they were remarkable places to learn and teach, but I also knew from those many layers of firsthand experience that they could be bastions of exclusion, of elitism, and entitlement, with only a very few students and faculty and even fewer school leaders fighting to realize a different sort of vision. But every single thing you said that February day, Tad, suggested that St. Andrews might just be the place, or maybe more importantly, might see it as an ongoing mission to keep striving to become the place that was more ethical, more authentic, more inclusive. I was hooked. Having made the commitment to move to Delaware, I remember telling some of my favorite teachers at my alma mater, the people whose beliefs in education I valued most, about my plans. And it seemed like they all knew of St. Andrews and that it was something different and special. Oh, that's the school with that headmaster, one of them remarked to me with excitement. Another, I should note, remarked on Will Spears really being fun to drink with at Bread Loaf. So, you know, a variety of input there. Talking about these first impressions hardly seems adequate to capture how important 17 years of Tad's mentorship, support, inspiration, and always open door have been to me. But it's a memory that I've come back to often over the years, most recently in my role as Dean of Faculty Development, since I've spent a lot of time talking to our teaching candidates. It's very evident that they too, even in your very last year as head of school, have had this inspirational first conversation with you, Tad. And for them, as it was for me, from the very first conversation, you've transformed their vision of what education can and should be. Over 11 years of co-teaching in humanities with you, Elizabeth, you have transformed my vision of who I can and want to be as a teacher, mentor, advisor, leader, and friend. I'll admit, tonight I'm feeling a bit like Lily Briscoe if she had not controlled her impulse to fling herself at Mrs. Ramsey's knee, to say to her, I'm in love with you, no, I'm in love with this all. My teaching other half, my intellectual 30-mile woman. Sitting on your left at the seminar table each day has brought me immeasurable joy, laughter, and inspiration, somehow even when we're grading, and has allowed me to become my best self, to the extent that I define my time at St. Andrews by the bright line of before humanities and after humanities. While I don't quite know what I will do without you, having just secured your promise to do to the Lighthouse exhibitions with me next year, and having so many things that we planned to do but didn't quite get around to that we still need to, our production of Arcadia with you as Lady Croom, our tutorial on Jane Austen, our Saturday Night Live style Really with Elizabeth and Emily about grammatical horrors in student papers. I'm trusting that you, like Nanmeen and Will Spears before you, will have retirement be the only thing that you ever fail at. Thank you both. I love you both.
Everybody, my name is Phil Smith. I'm a graduate of a class of '83, and I'm so honored to be a part of this celebration. Tad, Elizabeth, thank you for playing such important roles in so many lives. I'm sure this is overwhelming and hopefully a little bit uncomfortable. But, you know, the journey of our time here has been made richer because of the two of you as individuals and as a partnership. I am an actor, as is my wife, Louise. We are part of a theater company here in Chicago, which we help form and build called Looking Glass. It's an ensemble-based live theater dedicated to the creation and sharing of new work for the American stage. This life path is not what I would really call a safe bet. Just ask the advancement office. And yet we are still around after 34 years and a pandemic, and are currently planning next season. So maybe safe bets are not always a prerequisite for sustain. Tad was my English teacher as a junior, my first year there. In those days and these, I was a horrible speller. I think I spelled the word spelling wrong in an early paper, and that takes some doing. I was not a great writer or an avid reader, so really English should have been my least favorite subject, but it wasn't. Quite the opposite. I think Mr. Roach didn't really teach facts and figures. He didn't really focus so much on past simple and pluperfect tenses. Maybe he did, but I buried it. What I experienced most was that he taught risk and courage and breakthrough. And that had an effect on me as a pretty shy kid. Tad often asked me to read aloud roles in class from whatever play we were studying. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Othello, as he, sorry, that's my dog. Othello, as he pronounced it, with rounded O's. Waiting for Godot, others. To be honest, at the time, these great texts didn't speak to me as much as someone as authentically cool, in my mind at least. I mean, he was married to Elizabeth, as Tad Roach, asking me to speak the words during these round table readings. Tad Roach cultivates enthusiasm, and I was growing enthused. I think it was the next spring or the following fall that Tad, Mr. Spears, and others escorted our class on a trip to New York to see a Broadway show. We saw Master Harold and the Boys by Ethel Fugard. For those of you who didn't catch it, it's a remarkable South African work that one can really point to as an inflection point in grappling with the profound psychic fallout of living in an apartheid South Africa. This story and the writing and the three dimensions of it all, and Tad's yellow legal pad contextualization of it on our return, grabbed me for a long time. I recognized that I wanted to be part of that combustion. And so it all came together, especially with additional mentorship from Hoover Sutton and an actor I became. So Tad, I really have you to blame. Damn you. As an interesting side note, Looking Glass received a regional Tony Award in 2011. That same year, Ethel Fugard received the Lifetime Achievement Award, and I was in the tiny backstage wing of the Beacon Theater in New York with two other ensemble members waiting to receive our award. And Ethel Fugard was waiting there with us, much less than a 6 feet COVID distance away to accept his. It was a morphic moment, a phrase I later learned from Elizabeth, meaning, I think some coincidences are not random. To Elizabeth, a year after that, I was in a play at Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago called The March, which Elizabeth and Bernadette Devine were nice enough to attend. We all went out for a drink afterwards. This is something that people did before the pandemic. And we got to talking, and that was something that people did too. And that night, we all had something to do with dreaming up an idea of, wouldn't it be great if there was an alumni arts weekend, and if alumni from their respective fields, be they writing or editing or painting or acting, would come back to campus and engage and lead classes or workshops or Q&As in those fields with interested student body. And that idea took hold, and Elizabeth, by her force of will, became a reality that next spring. And Elizabeth is a passionate, caring, authentic, thoughtful, driven person. She produces. And returning that weekend was a moment for me, walking in what was fairly new at the time, the O'Brien Arts Building, I think it's called, really dedicated to fostering the path of the artist, which to me translates to fostering a path of connection to oneself, to the world, and to each other. And then experiencing the concert hall, the theater, the art rooms, the open spaces, how the students felt at home there. It struck me that the value that the school leaders obviously placed on the arts, to realize and witness the investment that the school under Tad and Elizabeth's tenure had obviously dedicated and made reality, was nothing short of breathtaking. I believe this transformation, not just in the arts, but in radical financial aid, in the sciences, in athletics, in the very fiber of the culture of that school, could only happen because the two of you together cultivated in partnership the conversations that must have carried on from the day's events into the evening, and then mingling into your dream worlds, carrying over into breakfast. The testing and retesting of idea and strategy and vision that the two of you, by your care and love for each other and the school and its potential, could only bring. Then your capability to inspire others on top of your penchant for follow-through made remarkable dreams manifest. But on this next leg of your journey, know this: we still need you. Don't rest too long. Rare people are by definition rare. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to join you all in this moment. I'm Edward Strong, class of 1966, and like many of you, I wonder where to start with this tribute, a tribute for a couple whose very lives are a tribute to intelligence, decency, kindness, empathy, and a full helping of what author Tom Wolfe called the right stuff. I'll start with Tad's long ago aside that fresh out of college and maybe a term of bread loaf to their names, he arrived in Middletown with his new bride in September of 1979 to be shown to their Spartan quarters on one of the underformed dorms equipped with desk, chair, rudimentary kitchen, and twin beds. Tad's relentless enthusiasm notwithstanding, he had to confess he wasn't quite sure what he had gotten Elizabeth and himself into. Fittingly, the #1 song on the pop charts that summer was the disco hit, I Will Survive. Not only survive, but thrive. For from this unprepossessing start evolved the legend of the Roach family, unswerving loyalty to the ideal of the best academic experience they could deliver for their students and ultimately their charges, coupled with the compassion and patience it required to steady on the adolescent population gathered on the banks of Knoxontown Pond. As one fortunate to be a trustee emeritus of the school, I can attest to Tad's tireless attention to detail at the board meetings and a truly astonishing amount of note-taking. When the Daniel T. Roach Library is established, I foresee forklifts full of yellow legal pads inscribed with Tad's singular handwriting being loaded into the building. The bonus for our family was the friendship we were able to forge with Tad and Elizabeth's growing family. While Matthew had graduated just before our family era at the school, Hadley and our son Owen co-wrote a screenplay together their senior year. When I chirpily suggested they could enter their script called The Listener in the Spring Arts Weekend, Owen's reply was no, they were going for a major studio release. The confidence of the young. Starting in 2006 and continuing to this day, our daughter Lida and Z Roach have been fervently debating the relative merits of Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer as the greatest of all time tennis players. And in one of her first forays into critical theory, young Annie Roach at the age of 5 or 6 observed how cool it was that at the top of the show, the actor portraying Frankie Valli in Jersey Boys sits on the spiral staircase stage left, watching the other actors in the band before he makes his entrance. Tad and Elizabeth, by the way, surely hold the independent school record for having attended more opening nights of Jersey Boys than anyone in their peer group. Broadway in 2005, London in 2008, and Philadelphia in 2011. We enjoyed many theatrical outings together with our families, sharing those happy times and bolstering each other in the hard times. If one could observe that it was Tad and Elizabeth's great good fortune to early on find and pursue their passion for teaching, the Strong family was similarly blessed to discover true and abiding friendship in these dynamic leaders of the school we all cherish. Now, as they prepare to disembark the good ship St. Andrews, and in the words of Huck Finn, light out for the territories, I'm confident they will enjoy continued accomplishments. For as a fellow parent once observed to me over breakfast in Odessa, Tad and Elizabeth are true believers. Tad and Elizabeth, for the generous share of your lives you devoted to this place, this community, this St. Andrews, thanks a million, maybe two. Godspeed to you both. And I pass the narrative baton to Laurel for her comments.
Okay, sorry. During the planning of the new arts building, Ed and SAS Allen was invited down to the school to advise as he could from a theatrical producer's perspective. He was invited to stay in the headmaster's house and returned home to say that the new headmaster was a really nice guy and he had a beautiful blonde wife and they had 4 beautiful children. Somewhat skeptical of the prep scene myself, I pictured the blonde wife in a velvet hairband and 4 tow-headed kids and replied, of course he does, dear. Within a year, Ed was on the board and we were touring the school with our son, a prospective fourth former. There was no velvet headband. And quite to the contrary, there were Fruit Loops in the cereal dispensers, messes in the dorm rooms, short skirts, long hair, snow days and free days, a constant flow of students through the headmaster's house, and anyone at all could ask the headmaster himself for a ride to the Wawa. We were soon woven into the tight-knit St. Andrews community, and Tad began encouraging us to send our daughter to SAS. Elizabeth will be her advisor, Tad promised. No pressure. When the time came, we did have to remind them of that assertion, but Lita was placed as promised in Elizabeth's advisory, which was lucky, not only because for 4 years, Lita had the benefit of Elizabeth's guidance and chocolate chip cookies, but on the day that Lita fainted in chapel and gave herself a concussion, we were in Chicago and Elizabeth volunteered to drive Lita home to New York. This meant not only 2.5 hours in the car with an ailing young lady, but forcing the car through the equivalent of Whitewater Rapids, where George Washington Bridge merges with the West Side Highway. But that is the Roaches always stepping up to do what needs doing and doing it properly according to the highest ethical standards. Why? So that afterwards, when everything's in place, they can have fun. That's one of the things these true believers believe in. They believe that fun belongs on campus in equal part with rigorous academics, that among the stresses of school life, it brings unity and comfort, and most significantly, they enjoy having fun themselves. Elizabeth will stay to the very last second at a women's book club meeting in New York, though it means running through Penn Station, pounding her fashionable new 3-inch heels into the terrazzo to catch that last train back to Wilmington. This taste for happiness shows up everywhere, as Frisbee on the front lawn, a student allowed to stay up late with Tad to watch a big game, or in the unsung touches provided by Elizabeth. The fresh, easy styles she chooses for alumni dinners, the invitations to school events that arrive in red envelopes the color of Valentine's, geraniums bejeweling the campus in spring, the color of Guinevere's rubies, the color of love, a color I've come to think of as Elizabethan red. The Roaches have inspired many lives of service by living them and lives of joy by creating it. The community of spirit and friendship that the Roaches have created at St. Andrews for all who have come through its door and walk the polished stones of its hallways lasts a lifetime. Okay, Martha Pemberton is up next.
That's right. Thank you so much for your words and for everyone who's spoken today. I'm sure I'll be echoing some themes that have already emerged. I know I will be. So also, Tad and Elizabeth, I want you to know that I've positioned your little screen right here and I'm looking at you with that piercing gaze that I've been on the receiving end of so many times. So as any St. Andrean knows, writing is a process. Free write, absolutely at the beginning, followed by rough draft, rounds of editing, many drafts, as alluded to by Emily Pressman. Well, somehow the idea of putting pen to paper on this one, irrationally, I know, made it seem that Tad and Elizabeth's retirement and departure would become, more real, as if my toasts were affecting the progression of time and reality. So this is on the rougher face, as it's been percolating in my mind, but not wanting to be put on paper. So edits will ensue, and you can expect further drafts in the mail. But on to my 2 points. I'm going to try and keep this to the 4-minute timeline. And the first one, Lolo already just said so beautifully. I wrote it down when she said it because it was exactly aligned to what I was going to say, which is that you have a seemingly infinite capacity to include others in your family. And so that's sort of the first aspect of my toast. Your kitchen table, literally and metaphorically, was had a space for anyone who needed a place. You opened your family to me and seemingly countless others, hundreds of others, in whatever way that individual most needed family at that moment in their life. Personally, this could have been in the form of ishkabibbles, pizza, spaghetti bake, a place to study, a place to watch the Tar Heels and the Panthers, career advice, romantic troubleshooting through the ages, more career advice, tending to an obsessive mind, shopping outings, trips to weddings, all of it that really felt like a family affair. And I'm not saying that was all me on the receiving end, certainly not all the romantic troubleshooting advice, but if someone needed that, it was there. Regardless of someone's age, circumstance, or background, your ethic was inclusivity. And that's been echoed many times tonight. And you modeled that, you lived it, you didn't just preach it. And in doing so, you made me and so many others feel welcome at your school, in your home, in your lives, and as part of your family. This is truly remarkable, as so many people have commented. Ultimately, one of the chief things you gave to me was the gift of belonging, which really bucked the trend and reputation, as Emily mentioned, of elitist prep schools whose ethic is traditionally and stereotypically exclusivity. And you instilled within me that ethic to carry forward into my life. And it's a guiding principle: kindness, inclusivity, making room for everyone at the table. The second point, and I feel that it would be remiss to not talk about education, and this has already been spoken of a little bit, but I was curious if anyone knows, and I doubt we have this figure handy, but I would be curious to know what percentage of St. Andreans end up in education as compared to those leaving similar institutions. And I would dare say it's quite high. I recall, and I don't know if I was there for this or if this is a story I've heard and internalized, but story about Tad when asked about what sort of work do alums do? And the interrogator was no doubt curious about status and average salary and advanced degrees and involvement in politics. And he fired back, the greatest tribute to the St. Andrews education is the number of teachers we send into the world. And that has always really stuck with me. So I'm a teacher today because of Tad and Elizabeth and because of my experience at St. Andrews. As a student, and it's hard to kind of figure out what my experience at St. Andrews really was. I was a student, I was a fledgling teacher, a maybe teacher, not sure I was going to be a teacher. But my experience throughout those years, and specifically in relationship with Tad and Elizabeth, convinced me that education is the most powerful force for change in the world. And I was being interviewed by a rising sophomore of the student newspaper at the school where I started working this most recent year. And she said, "Why do you want to be a teacher?" And, we're on a Zoom interview. It's August of 2021. COVID is raging. I said, "Well, education is the most powerful force for change in the world." And she was like, "I have never heard that answer before." I was like, "Well, get ready." An education rooted in love, respect, compassion, connection, understanding, critical thinking, relationships, and the coalescence of diverse experiences in a shared community. This has the power to make the world a better place. And Tad and Elizabeth gave me that belief. It gives hope. It inspires young people to use their minds, hearts, and souls to make the world better, more compassionate, kinder place. I tried to do a few other things with my career. As Tad and Elizabeth know, I tried to go down different paths, but it was absolutely impossible not to become a teacher. They gave me this calling, and I'm very grateful for it. So Tad and Elizabeth, thank you for planting that calling within me. Every day at my school and in my community, I work to edge the needle closer to that which my internal compass honed at St. Andrews points toward, which is diversity, inclusion, critical thinking, thirst for knowledge, and a belief that education is about making the world better. So going on through my notes, which are in actually coincidentally purple pen, was not intentional, just what I had, but thank you for the enormous role you have played in my life. The gifts of hope, kindness, inclusivity, and the superpower of education that you've left transversing schools and communities across the country and across the world. I truly don't think it's possible to measure the impact that I see of change agents and educators that are, I kind of see an army of St. Andreans taking on the world, trying to make it a better place. So thank you for everything. St. Andrews will miss you.
My name is Peter Salette. I'm the class in the class of '87. You know, after listening to everybody speak, I have so many similar themes. And I think Tad and Elizabeth, you can see the emotion on everybody's face as we are talking about you guys, and truly how profound your impact has been on all of our lives. And I'm sure everybody in the audience as well, and the hundreds and probably thousands of students and teachers, and how deep that impact really is. I'm going to keep my remarks really short, and I'm going to play a song for you guys. And I just, again, echoing what other people have said, but that you both always seem to have more confidence in me than I did in myself. And you were able to, and I've taken that confidence that you put into me, that you helped gift to me, and I've carried that with me throughout my life. And as I was trying to think of, you know, what to say, it's like, and I kept coming back to being 17 years old, and how important the people that influence you when you're 17 years old. It's like, I'm 52 years old right now. But there's a part of me that's still 17. And that part of me that's still 17 is still there with the two of you, and you know, with Will, and I got to give a shout out to Hoover Sutton as well. You know, and in a way, it's an age that we never leave. And so I think that's why when people are talking about the two of you and St. Andrews and how profound that impact is, that's where it comes from. And I can't thank you enough. So I am gonna sing a little song I wrote here called Colorful Dream. See the white frost on the window pane as it slowly moves to the sill. But soon we'll be part of the summer rains, dancing atop the green hills. I've heard we come to this world alone, and I've seen how we leave it alone. But in between, it's a colorful dream if we let it be so. And so, my dear friends, and to those I've known who have given themselves up to me, when it comes time to part, take this from my heart: you are all my family. 'Cause I've heard we come to this world alone, and I've seen how we leave it alone. But in between, it's a colorful dream if we let it be so. What a colorful dream. What a colorful dream. All that you see in this colorful dream. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Peter. That was beautiful. My name is Gail Wright. I was in the class of '84 at St. Andrews, and I grew up about a half an hour from St. Andrews. So I went home a lot while I was there. And Elizabeth and Tad, since you know I love the Delmarva Peninsula still, and I would like to offer you that there's some places like outside of Middletown, like Yosemite, or Big Sur, or San Francisco, or Napa, that perhaps now you can, have a little time to explore. So I know Jenny and I, and there may be some other Californians on there, but we're 75% vaccinated now, so it won't be too long before you can come and see us out here too. I actually tried to articulate the gratitude I wanted to show to the two of you in a letter that went out to the whole school community today. And I don't think the two of you have seen that yet, so you can look at that later tonight. And I hope that everybody will go to the actual email that went out today and look at that. And I'm also going to say explicitly, because as far as I know, Elizabeth and Tad have told everybody that they wanted us to do, in addition to this Love Fest, was to support the school's ability to continue to support inclusion and justice. And so go in there and make a donation to that and manifest your gratitude, because they have also taught us to act in this world. So Tad and Elizabeth, I wanted to acknowledge that obviously it's been quite the year for your final year. And to our school community, I said that it is actually precisely in these times of tumult that we most need models of wholehearted living. And it is such a gift to have you two exceptional figures right here among us, exactly in this present moment. And is exactly your lives so well lived that we all need as a model in this moment, at the end of this year. And so maybe it isn't quite an accident in that way, that again, we get to learn from you in this really big picture way. So I just want to take a second to honor that. And I'm so honored to be here amongst the rest of the people. So my thoughts that passed the English teacher part and Monica Matuk's reading are in that letter. Okay, so the rest now I'm resorting back to storytelling. Okay, and I didn't get to have you guys as an English teacher, and I didn't get to have you as an advisor. And I thought I drank pretty fully of St. Andrews, so that is a small regret that I have. But I would like to offer you current collaboration as you think of how to step down out of retirement, because I have actually been leading a writing seminar, once a week drop-in writing seminar for healthcare workers all over the world during COVID, every Saturday morning for the last year. And I just was asked to lead a literature and medicine seminar upcoming as a means of healing for healthcare workers. So I have a word for you, which is master class. Okay, so take a little time with the grandbabies, take a little time to rest. I know we all need a little time to exhale and inhale again after this school year. Okay, but I have some collaboration in mind for you. Okay, but what I did get to do with you all at St. Andrews, which of course at that time, what I wanted to do when I finished St. Andrews was play in the NBA. And for the rest of you that weren't in the 80s, I'm 5'1", okay, about Elizabeth's size and height. But I would like to thank both of you for the time we spent in the old gym, okay? And for you teaching me to coach on the floor. And you teaching me that one of the most important lessons was how you get the ball to the right person at the right time. It doesn't matter who's the star of the team. If you can't get the ball to the right person at the right time, and you can't do the play as we set it out, or you can't react to actually what's going on the floor, okay? And those skills have been tremendously helpful to me, leading teams for 40 years since then, and I still am like the little scrappy point guard thanks to you guys, okay? So thank you for that. But I wanted to reflect a little differently. I share everybody's sense of things, but I wanted to actually reflect on what a blessing it's been to know you for such a long time, and rather than actually our time at St. Andrews, what I've been able to watch blossom over 40 years of all of us living and growing, right? And Tad, I would like to say particularly for you that I feel like you have taught me over these many years well after I left St. Andrews, the importance of starting a conversation about meaning, authenticity, and justice, and about raising those topics whenever we can. And then we have to start with curiosity and respect and ask a lot of questions. And then I think one of your points of brilliance is that you use and teach us to use every platform we have to open up these conversations. So as an example of this, Mara Burnett, my roommate at St. Andrews for 2 years, and I had this conversation where it turns out, we hadn't talked to each other about this, we both have saved like almost all of the things that you write in the alumni magazine, and we have them shoved in books, and we pull them out to our teenagers from time to time. And let me assure you, both of us get like things from 8 other schools, and I don't even look at them, okay? And there's a few schools that you know the names of in that list, right? And I don't even look at them to see what somebody has written. And actually, Will, I'll give you a shout out because I've saved a few of yours too. But it's, who would have thought of like the last page of an alumni magazine as the place to find a reader for leading a meaningful life? So this ability to take every moment we have to open up the conversation to how to help people feel like they belong or how to bridge our differences, I sincerely thank you for that. In that, I think, modeling that our own unique voice matters, and it matters in the world if we use words as a vehicle of love. And Elizabeth, I had this funny thought that I hadn't thought of in decades, which was some random moment that we both had black paint, like the kind that baseball players mostly are worn on our faces, and of mudsliding in the pouring rain in the total mud fields out on the field with our hockey sticks. So I don't really know exactly when that occurred, but I hadn't thought about that in a long time. So I would share that little tidbit. But more importantly, what I wanted to say was your being a steadfast beacon of intellectual leadership, of candor, of dry wit, of both fierce love and tender acceptance. And your presence as a woman leader at St. Andrews and your visible, respectful partnership with Mrs. Roach's husband has had a profound impact on girls and boys at St. Andrews over the past 40 years. And I would say, as the first head girl of the student body, that has had a profound impact. And I am certain will have a profound impact for Joy McGrath as she becomes our first head of school at St. Andrews. And I really have appreciated the opportunity to watch you grow and expand your own identities. Everybody's been talking about your beautiful identities. And, it's kind of true, like Phil Smith said, when you guys kind of first arrived, you were just kind of the cool kids, right? You were kind of sassy and dare I say, sarcastic right out of college, you know, and you just, it was like Phil, it was like the cool kids asking. And I wasn't the cool kid because I didn't get to be in the Roaches English class, you know. This is where that feeling of somehow we're always 17 on some piece, but you didn't stay there. You didn't stay there as your 24-year-old selves, right? Over time, including becoming parents, you very intentionally deepened. And you opened your arms and you opened your hearts and you cultivated your own capacity for inclusivity and to help everybody feel a sense of belonging, as so many people that have spoken tonight before me spoke to. And that's gone out in concentric circles in St. Andrews, all the way to California, really all over the world for decades. And you have both been a model for my own growth towards wholehearted living. And so I want to send you off now with two great lines of poetry. I think we would agree that every day should have at least 2 great lines of poetry in it. And I know that we share some affinity for David Whyte. And so I hope that you will rely on the entire alumni body, many of whom have made more transitions in their careers than you have, to, as David Whyte said, remember, you are not leaving, you are arriving. May we all aspire to lives so well lived as you have modeled for us. With my deepest love and gratitude, all the best.
Master of Ceremonies, presenters, and all SAS family members in attendance, Mr. and Mrs. Roach. I bid you a good evening, and I assure you that I am honored to be offered a couple of minutes to address this community, which has come together with the intention of paying fitting tribute to the lives and works of Mr. and Mrs. Roach. My name is Robert Thomas, class of '84. And that's about as far as I got in my attempt to put pen to paper in preparation for tonight. It's the preparation part that got me, outside of a couple of notes. See, outside of English class, I've never really had interaction with the Roaches that was based on preparation. No, they weren't my coaches, so I didn't prepare for practice. They weren't my advisors, I didn't prepare for meetings. They weren't my quartermasters, I didn't have to prepare for lights out. The fact is, I wasn't even prepared for the Roaches. I wasn't prepared to meet them when I did. Thank God I did, and when I did. I wasn't prepared for the change in my trajectory, the change in the trajectory of my years at St. Andrews that they would foster. I couldn't have been prepared for the impact they would have on my life to this day. Choices I've made along the way, my career, my choice in a career, my choice in what I do with my free time, even parenting choices. And I didn't even know them as parents in those days. Long story short, I had just started my first week at St. Andrews and had an unfortunate social event. That event threatened to have me shut down socially as distrust built. That obviously doesn't work in such an environment, but I had to bail. I had to go home and explain to my first generation immigrant mother from Barbados, a land of God, family, and education, that I was walking away from this educational opportunity. That I had turned down the Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts for St. Andrews, and now I would have nothing. You can't tell, but I'm staring at you too. In my heart of hearts, you saved me. By opening your doors to students in general, oh, I'm sorry. By Stacy opening your doors to students in general, but you co-signed it. And specifically to students of color. You provided me with a safe place. A place I could feel unjudged, unmonitored, unscrutinized, a place where I wouldn't have to see racial epithets scratched into my furniture, a place where I didn't feel tolerated, but free to be me. That safe space, and I speak for myself, but I know there are many out there, that you created allowed me to disturb the universe. Looking at you, Gail. Disturb the universe by putting myself out there, by cautiously making myself vulnerable to people who didn't look like me. That safe space allowed me to form relationships that I can look back on fondly, and in some cases, enjoy to this day. It literally allowed me to sing, to dance, to emote. It gave me the strength, along with my beautiful and talented co-star, to push back when we were told that in this production of Othello, he won't be kissing Desdemona on her deathbed. You gave me the desire to be a part of SAS, to want to continue your legacy. In short, you gave me my voice. You're also threatening to take it away from me right now. This is not a political message, but in essence, in this time when so many refer to different lives that matter, I remember a brief period when I wasn't sure how much my life mattered. And I remember two people who took the time out to convince me that it did. I love you. We love you.
Thank you, Robert. So I guess it's my turn here. I hope you can all hear me. It's approaching 3 a.m. in London, England, but I'm no stranger to staying up. I learned this trait at St. Andrews, where I spent many nights doing my homework, because yeah, that just was the process, that was the path for me. Well, today I want to share some stories with you where I relive, reaffirm, and celebrate the wonderful Tad and Elizabeth. So I'm going to start with this first story, and it goes like this. What have you done, Eric? I just smashed the main backboard, the one only glass backboard we had on campus. I'm aware we probably have 13 now, but the only glass backboard we had on campus, practicing against an invisible pro, finishing with a two-hand dunk. Only this time the rim came down and glasses shattered and rained down in pieces. I'd just broken the backboard. How was I going to explain this to the headmaster? I was nervous, I was terrified, I was petrified. I'd need to confess. It was a long strut from the field house to the dining hall area. Tad, I'm sorry, but I just broke the backboard. I dunked it and Tad returned a smile with gusto. Break another one. I understood his message. Tad's response fortified me. I was sanctified. My second story. So the Roaches invited me to dinner. at a restaurant that uniquely allowed its customers to write and draw on the dining table. Once orders were placed, we, Matthew, Hadley, Zach, Annie, Elizabeth, Tad, and I sparked a creative writing process. Each individual contributed to the status quo or its rupture in consolidating a story before the food arrived. I'm pretty sure Annie did much better than me. This surprise academic exercise in the most unusual settings, to me, served as a profound affirmation that academia and intellectualism have no bounds. On another occasion, Tad may have been concerned over the balance of my lifestyle. Fair enough. As he quizzed me on the status of my relationships. Have you found a partner yet? I became emotional as I reflected on the capacity of the question. I never thought it was really for me. I struggled to answer the question. Elizabeth, sensing my internal conflict, interjected, "It's complicated." It was complicated at the time, but I was in the midst of a couple, Tad and Elizabeth, Mr. and Mrs. Roach, who inspired and subtly encouraged me to live life to the fullest. I will spare you all the details of class of 2009 senior prank, the most obnoxious of all time. But dear Tad and Elizabeth, to close this off, it's been a complete honor and blessing for me that our lives have been linked. A miracle, I would say. I've had the good fortune to be shaped and molded and learn from you both. Thank you so much. I'll love you forever. All the best in the next stage.
Hi, Todd and Elizabeth. Kearney, and hope you can hear me. I am a proud graduate of the class of 93 and also a double Roach advisee. And though I am a 45-year-old woman today, this night is bringing me back to being a 13-year-old child on Lower Pell in the late 80s. And discovering my dorm parents are a very young Tad and Elizabeth Roach, who've just had Hadley. Life probably felt in disarray. And it's funny to think back to that time now because, we were children arriving in that, near subterranean corridor and making a jump into something so unknown, boarding school, right? Living away from home, and what would St. Andrews be like? And I think back now, making that jump, and at the end of that hall, behind a wooden door were two people who would change my life forever, though I didn't know it then. So Tad and Elizabeth, I'm so honored to get to be a part of this, and the words that have been said, I echo all of them. And I can't believe how momentous this is and how impossible this is to believe that you're leaving St. Andrews. It's so hard to picture the school without you there, and all of your contributions. But for me, as I went back in my mind, thinking about your legacy and memories that feel so visceral of being with you and the family, I kept coming back to the Harkness table as well, and thinking about the epigraph of Howard's End and the words "only connect" coming to mind over and over again. And thinking those were the words we underlined, we discussed, we analyzed, we poured through the text of Howard's End with you. And as you close this chapter, your time at St. Andrews, they feel deeply resonant to me. Only connect. That's what you taught us as dorm parents, sharing your life and your family with all of us. Your home, as many have said, was a refuge. It was a hearth. It was a place where lost things were found. Only connect. It's what you made possible as advisors to us, helping us navigate teenage life. The ishkabibble, Elizabeth, the laughter, the knowing, and the empathy, keeping us connected to adults who cared. Only Connect was your passionate coaching, your raw athletic competitiveness, which certainly connected us with the goals in field hockey and soccer, tennis, and with our teammates. But you taught us that being athletes was just another form of connection that meant something. Only Connect in the classroom, pushing us to be more than just budding literary critics, but compassionate and constructive classmates committed to the collective climb. You're teaching, you're advising, you're caring, and your humanity. I picture them like a cairn at the start of a trailhead, where the layers of what has come before us are piled, one on top of the other, to show others the way. Over 40 years, you have built us and you have seen us. Thank you for connecting us to you and to ourselves and to each other. Congratulations on your remarkable careers and the lives you have transformed through your work and love. You are my heroes, and I cannot wait to see what this next chapter holds for you and the family. I'm just sending you all of my love.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barb Sampson. It is an honor to be asked to be part of this tribute to these two amazing colleagues, but more importantly, my friends. My career started at St. Andrews in June 1978. And over my 41 years there were always two constants, Elizabeth and Tad. We experienced many, many life-changing events. First, they were young teachers, and everyone could see the ground laying for their leadership roles. When Tad became head of school, his impact and love and concern for the staff was tremendous. His famous words were, "My door is always open. Please come see me. Stop in any time." He meant this wholeheartedly, and not just if you had a concern. But I shared with Tad and Elizabeth much more than a work relationship. I watched them become young parents and raise 4 extraordinary adults, all the while teaching SAS students academically and with respect, compassion, and dedication. Their son Z is so very special to me. I still have that picture in my mind of getting him on the bus for his first day of school while Tad and Elizabeth were teaching SAS students. That moment will stay ingrained in my mind forever. Then the family grew with Annie, my sweet goddaughter. By watching Elizabeth and Tad, I have learned how to have patience and how to nurture children with love and guidance. In our early years, Thursdays afternoons were very special to Annie and I, so it's only fitting that today is Thursday. I'm reading this because I don't want to get too crazy here. No words can express my gratitude for including me in your fold of these many, many people. And I'm just lucky to be here tonight. I will forever cherish all the family memories but most of all, we'll treasure our friendship and love. I hope you enjoy every day. Retirement goes by quickly, so enjoy. Much love to everyone. Good night.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam McIlvaine. I'm the class of 1985. Shout out to Gary and Stacy. And where's Dale? Is he still here somewhere? And these words, first of all, I am so amazed. I'm not amazed, actually. I expected as much. Just these lovely words of tribute from everybody to Tad and Elizabeth. It's remarkable, and I just want to thank you guys for sharing that. These words are going to pale in comparison, I'm afraid, but please bear with me. Tad, these are for you. These words are for you. Tad, I first knew you as my soccer coach in the fall of 1983. And you must be the only soccer coach in history to wear cleats on match day, paired with dress slacks, a button-down shirt, and a tie, unless Spears, as your assistant, also felt obliged to do the same out of solidarity, pity, and perhaps to make you look less strange to opposing teams. But I can't quite remember that bit. You were special, though, and incredibly motivational. In particular, your pre-game speeches were legendary, sprinkled with literary references, fiery images, the occasional well-placed curse word, and delivered with the passion of an award-winning stage actor, which part of me thinks you actually wanted to be. In any case, you had us frothing at the mouth, full of self-belief, and beating teams that were measurably better than us, even if I didn't realize that till later. That's how good you were. You were also my English teacher senior year, and the zeal and fervor that you had on the pitch was perhaps even more apparent around the oval table of your classroom. Your classes were always captivating, and I still remember you reading a passage out loud from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is a play we weren't even studying, but which you brought in to help us better understand the text we were reading. And also perhaps, now that I think about it, because you really did want to be a stage actor. What I really liked about you as a teacher, apart from your infectious love of literature, was that the main purpose of the class was not to dissect a text in order to write a clinical, perfect essay. Though you did give me such pointers as, why don't you finish the book first before you decide whether or not it is a masterpiece? That still is a favorite quote of mine. And that is a direct quote. Brilliant. Going back to Gail's occasional words of sarcasm. I may have borrowed that once and twice from my career. Now, as I recall, the purpose was to show us how literature can get us out of our own skins, make us more empathetic, and think about what it means to be human. And while I didn't take too many English classes in college, the types of essential questions that you brought up in that senior seminar were what led me to study sociology and philosophy, in no small way influenced the way I approach teaching today. Tad, you were an incredibly important person for me during those formative years. Like many, I idolized you, but not just because you were the charismatic incarnation of the scholar athlete I craved to be, or because you were my coach, teacher, confidant, mentor, big brother, cheerleader, and supporter. You were for everybody. My adulation, and I dare say envy, was actually based on something a bit more than that, I think. When you live at boarding school, as everyone on this call knows, you get to know your idols, your teachers, on a deep, intimate level. You see them at sit-down meals. You see them walking in the woods with their spouses and their friends. You see them trying to find a second of personal time and not succeeding. You see them in their apartments. You see them in town, scarfing down a cheesesteak. You might even see them at the grass docks at night when you were definitely not supposed to be there. In short, you saw them live their genuine lives. And Tad, for me, even as a high school student, it became clear why I so wanted to emulate you. It was your inquisitiveness, your joy, your heart, and your love of life, people, and community. You set a wonderful example of what it means to live a rich and meaningful life. Through the years, I haven't been able to return to St. Andrews too often, but I was able to sneak back on occasion and loved catching up with you whenever I could. You seem the same, look the same, minus a lock or two of hair, and were as open, jovial, engaged, and attentive as ever. Mostly, though, I would get my glimpses of you through the SAS alum magazines and emails. Once you became head of school, I noticed a real change in the tenor of the headmaster notes and graduation and chapel speeches. From my perspective, the school seemed to have a mission beyond being simply a traditional prep school and was pushing less excellence, that trite word that elite institutions are always touting, and more engagement, empathy, and community. Indeed, I found myself comparing your speeches and essays to those of the heads of the theoretically more progressive schools where I have taught, and thinking how much more I preferred to hear and to read what you had to say. It was more honest, more genuine, more hopeful, more compassionate. Tad, you were an inspiration for me as a student and an athlete, and have been influential to me as well as an educator. What a remarkable career of dedication and love to the place and to the people of St. Andrews. Congratulations on your retirement, and best of luck to both of you in your new adventures. Thank you both.
Hi, I'm Heather Mitchell, class of 1992, also a board member on the St. Andrews board. So thrilled to be on Zoom today with all of you. This has been remarkable today or tonight. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity to give tribute to the Roaches. Oh, and I also have a special guest with me.
Hi, I'm Carter Mitchell, her daughter, and I'm also super excited to be here today.
So when I was a student at SAS in the late 80s, early 90s, the Roach duo was known to be incredible coaches. Obviously, they're gifted in a myriad of ways, but I remember so vividly Elizabeth gracefully and expertly coaching girls tennis and field hockey. I mean, she truly connected with her student athletes on an elevated level that one might call effortless, just natural.
So it was rather interesting when a couple weeks ago, my mom, dad, and I were flipping through some old scrapbooks. Most of you don't know this, but when Mr. Roach used to coach boys basketball, he used to coach against my dad, Kenny. My dad went to the Sanford School. In fact, the first time Mr. Roach and my dad ever met was on the basketball court. Since my dad's out of town today, I get the pleasure of standing in for him. So, to my astonishment, we came across a few headlines from the News Journal that I'd like to share. Exhibit A, Saturday, February 23rd, 1991, Sanford beats St. Andrews 73-32. Exhibit B, this one says Sanford rips St. Andrews 76-45.
Kenny thought that adding in that he had a triple-double that game was a little over the top, a bit much, but I think why not? It turns out that basketball season, Sanford's margin of victory over St. Andrews was 36 points with an average score of 71-35. I do think it's fair that Elizabeth had more success coaching because she couldn't have had less.
Just saying.
But in all seriousness, we love you. You've been here for the Mitchell family through all of our accomplishments and defeats. There has not been a time when you haven't been an incredible force in our lives of love, of admiration, of compassion, of generosity, and of friendship. And for that, we are grateful and honored and really, truly thank you for everything.
And since I've known you my entire life at St. Andrews, it's going to take a lot of time to get used to you not being there.
The Mitchell family loves you and we will miss you, but we also can't wait to be there for your next adventure.
For your next adventure.
We love you.
Will, can you hear me?
Yes, Steve, you're on.
Okay, hey.
Look excited.
First of all, yeah, I'm like the second old, well, maybe the oldest person speaking tonight, but it's a real honor to be asked to participate in this. Incredibly distinguished company, incredible stories, and a great purpose. other than I'm not a graduate, other than having been on the board for 25 years, maybe I was asked to do this because other than Jack and Maureen Harrington, I probably paid more tuition to St. Andrews than any other person on the call, or in living memory. But it's a real honor. I think each of us could have spoken for an hour about Tad and Elizabeth, and the incredible, remarkable, really, legacy that they're leaving at St. Andrews. But I just, in the limited time I've got, wanted to talk about three things. First of all, which was referred to by our very first speaker, speaking for Joni O'Brien. I was a brand new trustee when John and Joni announced to the board that they wanted to go back to New England and to move on after a very successful, transformational leadership of St. Andrews. John knew, and I think he asked me to be on the board because I'd had board experience at Wesleyan at the university level, and he knew that I'd chaired a search committee for Wesleyan's president, and also I chaired the search committee for a president of the oldest bank in Washington. And he took me aside and said, I know that the conventional wisdom, the playbook, is that you should have a national search even when you have a strong internal candidate. But I want you to know that we have a really strong internal candidate. I said, look, okay, I mean, it's true that it's a rebuttable presumption to have a national search. So what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to trust me. John O'Brien said, you trust me that we have the person to be the next headmaster of St. Andrews. And I can remember before that board meeting saying, okay, John, I trust you. And he was right. We got the right person, and the rest is history in St. Andrews. By the way, before I forget and go on to my next point, I want to say hello to my brother by another mother, Everett McNair, who has served with me on the board, and we hung out together. And Everett, I'm very involved now with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and voter suppression stuff. So I'd like to connect with you on some of the things you talked about, okay? But anyway, John O'Brien bucked convention by telling the board back in the day that he had the guy, and he had the couple, and he had a dual leadership team. And he was right. And anyway, we all trusted him on the board, and he nailed it. The second thing I'd like to say of my 3 points is that in 1999, a couple years later, we were planning for the 1999 trustee retreat. It was back in the day of Hick Rowland. Kitten was the head of the board. Michael Warner's mother, Patsy, was on the board. Kent was on the board. And Tad asked to have lunch with me to talk about the retreat. So we met at a restaurant in Washington, and we talked about the agenda, and we talked about the importance of the faculty above all else, and faculty enrichment, and maybe the need, which later became a reality, of a K-8 school, Episcopal school near St. Andrews, not just because it was a good idea, but because it would help retain our best faculty who had children. And at the end of the lunch, when we covered all of that, we were getting finished, I thought, and he said, I actually have something else to talk to you about. Elizabeth's probably cringing right now, but and I said, what's that? He said, well, you've got 5 kids. Elizabeth and I have 3. She tells me she'd like to have a 4th child. What do you think? And I looked at him and I said, what? You're lucky enough to be married to Elizabeth Roach, and she tells you that she would like to have a 4th child. That is the biggest no-brainer I've ever heard. And I knew I was affirming, he was already there, but I think he wanted, kind of an older guy with a bunch of kids. So that was the main theme of the second part of that lunch was, Tad, come on, wake up, buddy. Listen to your wife. And she is quite remarkable. And I don't know, I'm sure they would have gone ahead anyway, but what do we have is Annie. We got Annie, and she's, of course, a student at Wesleyan, which makes me very happy. Okay, so the third point that I want to make in my limited time, I'm not going to talk about being at the last game at Yankee Stadium with my St. Andrews son, Andrew, class of '09, and Elizabeth and Tad. We were there for the last game because he and I are Yankee fans, and we got to hear Jeter's speech on last night. My last point is really about the legacy, the remarkable coherence of what Tad and Elizabeth, and frankly, you, Will, and Monica, and John, and others in a group that says a lot about Tad's leadership, that he allowed people of your quality to flourish as leaders in his leadership group. I mean, I've been involved with a lot of boards, different educational institutions. This is the most coherent alignment between a board of trustees, a faculty, parents, because they bought in, and students, to have an educational environment that is countercultural, that is based on values, on love of learning for its own sake, of giving back, kindness, service to others, diversity, including sharing, listening, making people realize that human dignity and self-worth is more important than what college you get into or what job you have or how much money you have or you hope to make. And frankly, love of your neighbor, which is what Jesus taught us. You know, I mean, that's what a Christian school should stand for, and not too many do. So when I think about the tone at the top and the standard that they've set, it's a sustainable, sustaining, remarkable legacy. And we all are indebted to you, Tad, and to Elizabeth for institutionalizing those values and that culture. We love you, we respect you, and I hope we get to participate from the sidelines in your next part of your career. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Jenny Kern from the class of '83. I was also honored to co-teach with Tad in 1989 and happy to serve as a trustee as well. It's so moving to have this chance to speak on behalf of the class that literally staged a sit-in to keep Mr. Tad Roach from leaving St. Andrews for law school in 1981. You are all welcome for that. Elizabeth, you might have had some opinions about it too. What to say of this incredible team that is Tad and Elizabeth Roach? In the simplest terms, they helped lay the foundation for our lives. Tad, Elizabeth, your careers launched us into an imperfect world, more prepared to live our lives and strive for a more just and meaningful society. Your example taught us that opportunities and efforts ripple out to impact those with whom we are forever interconnected. And it's such an honor to be interconnected with all of you. We love you and remember so many moments over so many years. Think of this as kind of a collage with input from my beloved classmates. We love you for talking to us about stewardship as 14-year-olds. We love you for asking again and again and again, what is the significance? We also love you for not making us diagram sentences. We love you. We love that as co-teachers, you cut right to the shocking chase in Lady Chatterley's Lover and challenged us to go deeper with The Sound of the Fury. We love you for reminding us that indeed the readiness is all. I think, Will, you had some influence with that too. We love you for inspiring us to read Pride and Prejudice and To the Lighthouse in our free time. We love that the words that come to mind when we think of Elizabeth are safe, wise, committed, maternal, magnanimous, and gracious. We love that the words that come to mind for Tad are impassioned, inspirational, stewardship, consummate mentor, and significance. We love you for prioritizing inclusion in ways that matter, like for just one of 1,000 examples, overseeing the installation of an elevator to the chapel. And before that was installed, thank you for helping carry me up 27 steps with Mr. O'Brien. We thank you for taking seriously the call for a meaningful reconciliation for women and people of color in a historically white male school, and for making all of our lives richer in the process. We love you for coaching and encouraging, modeling and molding, as we grew up knowing that we were seen and respected. We love you for driving around Philadelphia in traffic in search of a fog machine for our prom. We love you for grieving with us and celebrating each of us. We love you for welcoming us back again and again and reminding us that we belong, even when we had forgotten. We remember, we thank you, and we wish you on this, your commencement, time and space and good health to do whatever you choose to do in your next chapter. You might even consider law school. But you can come to California first and visit us, right, Gail and Plum? Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Tad. We love you.
This is amazing. So great to hear and see former colleagues, students, trustees, parents, Tad and Elizabeth. So my wife, Lisa, and I lead a small boarding school in New Hampshire called Dublin School. And we are here because Elizabeth and Tad told us at one point we needed to lead a school. And when Tad and Elizabeth tell you this, you do what they say. So here we are 13 years later. I want to first say something to Tad. And you know, when you work in education, and especially when you're on a certain track and you're becoming an administrator, head of school, you get lots of pats on the back. And I think back to arriving at St. Andrews as a 21-year-old in a 1975 VW microbus. And I had a lot of growing to do. And I think it was my second year. I was about 3 weeks late on returning some history papers to students. And Tad brought me in and, as a head now, I don't remember the attaboys and you're doing great. I remember someone caring enough to say, you're not doing great and you need to step it up. And Tad said, Brad, if you're going to do this, get on it. You need to be the best. You need to be great at what you're doing. And it's a lot easier to say good job when someone's doing well, but when someone's struggling and to tell them to step it up, that's huge. And that has made me a better leader and a head of school because he cared enough to say, you're not doing well and you need to do better. So that was as a 22-year-old that he said that, and I've never forgotten it. And I will say Tad and Elizabeth's first ever hire as head of school was my wife, Lisa. And as Tad would say, she was a brilliant language teacher and an amazing person. And I am forever indebted for that hire. So you are a brilliant finder of talent and people, Tad and Elizabeth. So thank you so much for that. And I'm going to follow up on Mr. McNair's comments about Elizabeth. Teachers at boarding school are kind of like adults in suspended adolescence. And you may know that we are learning from the adults in the community. And when Lisa and I were wondering if we could raise our kids on a boarding school campus and have them attend our own school, we remembered the example of Elizabeth and Tad, but I really think of Elizabeth, who was able to teach, run a school, carve out a magical space for her own kids. And we realized we can do the same. And what a gift. And thank you. When we were able to do that, and we wouldn't have been able to do that if it weren't for you, Elizabeth. So many thanks. And the Bates family loves you both. And we love you so much, Tad, that like I was trying to skip a Bruins playoff game to watch this. And until about half an hour ago, and Will caught me turn on the game, and he's like, Brad, I can see the reflection of the game in your glasses. And I felt like 22 years old again when, and you know, like Will was an incredible mentor to me as well. And I actually had a radio show at St. Andrews, and he said, I remember him saying, like, Brad, you can't say that on the radio. And he was just just a great mentor. And so I was busted again by Will, so thank you. But Tad, I'm just, you've probably forgotten what it feels like to watch a playoff game in the NHL. So, but at least your Sabres got the #1 pick. And so I hope you can enjoy that in retirement. And Lisa and I are so excited that you and Elizabeth, it sounds like you're going to be neighbors with us in the future. And we really hope to see you. And we thank you so much for all you've done for us. And you've launched so many school leaders and educators, and Dublin School would not be what it is today without the two of you. And we love you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess I'm up. Can you all hear me? You can hear me well? Okay, so I'm Sully Jenkins, class of '99. I'll start by saying it's going to be very, very difficult to sum up 26 years of love, respect, and admiration in just 3 or 4 minutes. But in the spirit of being a St. Andrews alum, I will find a way to succeed. It is actually this ethos, an ethos of a commitment to excellence and success, which embodies the man that you see in front of you. And that man is a product of an unbelievable community, one in which the most essential and ideal qualities of human beings exist: love, respect, decency, altruism. While we are by far not perfect, for me, SAS is truly humanity at its finest. The founding members ignited the flame of excellence, and it is the unbelievable people like Mr. and Mrs. Roach. It's still difficult for me to call them Tad and Elizabeth. It's so weird. I'm sorry, it's like I'm stuck in 1999. It's unbelievable. But it's people like this that have carried the spirit and nurtured the St. Andrews family for over 40 years, giving us every single part of them, their minds, their hearts, their lives, and their souls. Look around at the world. We should all be very, very thankful that people like this still actually exist. Thankful that people like this not only exist, but that they exist in leadership positions at prestigious, powerful institutions. They are the perfect combination of excellence and humility. While tonight is indeed a collective celebration of Tad and Elizabeth, I'm able to do it. I am particularly and especially grateful and thankful, not only for the gracious opportunity to speak tonight, but for having the pleasure of truly being a part of the Roach family and a part of its legacy. See, you have to understand, back in 1995, I was a poor Black kid from Brooklyn, New York, blessed with a tremendous opportunity to study at one of America's most elite schools. Before I arrived, intellectually, I knew I belonged. Socially, I wasn't quite so sure. I'm sure you understand that taking a walk in Crown Heights in Brooklyn in the middle of the night in those days is not like taking a walk on the front lawn in the middle of the night. And yet Tad and Elizabeth made that transition for me so seamless. I expected to be out of place. I wasn't. I was used to expecting any random person to assault me on the streets back home. I was not used to being assaulted with the smiles, kindness, and compassion on campus. Tad and Elizabeth helped create and foster that safe place. They nurtured that haven. For that, St. Andrews was and will always be that special place of safety for me, where I can be myself, unapologetically, and it's always all good. I never saw them, not then and not now, as they're white and I'm Black. I saw them as loving people whose main concern was my well-being, intellectually, socially, emotionally, financially, spiritually. And because of that, my time at St. Andrews was and will always be the absolute best times of my life. I'm almost 40. And in life so far, I've learned that you never realize who really loves you when times are good. You find out when times are bad. Lord knows, after St. Andrews, I had some very tough and dark times to deal with. But lo and behold, they were still right there as I was trying to work everything out, willing and ready to support me in any way long after I graduated. Especially difficult was after setting many records in basketball, being the school's first 1,000-point scorer, being the second leading scorer in the state my senior year. My college career was derailed by an irrational, unsympathetic, callous, and cold coach. I yearned to go back to St. Andrews, that warm place of comfort. It was then that I really realized the place of the Roaches and St. Andrews in my life. It was no doubt difficult to deal with. But in addition to the few true friends who helped me get through the turbulent times, I had the Roaches. For them, I wasn't an advisee. I wasn't a student. I wasn't an alum. I was family. It's not the amazing friends that I'll remember most at St. Andrews. It's not the athletic accolades and records in the school's history that will mean the most. It's not the intellectual stimulation that I'll miss when I was defending my exhibition. It's not the late night McDonald's runs that I'll crave. The reason why I won't miss those things as much is because none of them would have been possible nor enjoyable without the support, encouragement, love, and reassurance from these two great people who were always there for me. The first thing I will always remember when I think of St. Andrews is Mr. and Mrs. Roach. Words, though oftentimes powerful, can also be incredibly cheap and inadequate. That is because there are no words to describe how incredibly grateful I am to have met these two wonderful human beings, for them to have been advisors and mentors, for them to have been an ideal model of family life from which I nurture my own environment with my wife and kids, for them to have taken me under their wings, and for them to have allowed me into their lives. Very few things in life are forever, besides diamonds and books. And with regards to books, I have been very fortunate to have published my first one not too long ago. In trying to engineer this timeless piece, there was no way I could not mention them on my dedication page. It will serve as a testament for everyone and everywhere at any time that my love for them is true and pure and until the end of time. Last but not least, I have to thank the incredible, absolutely incredible faculty here in this gathering who also made a difference in my life alongside the Roaches, like Will Spears, the Bates, John and Monica, the O'Briens. Truly, thank you. Thank you so much. I love you guys. You guys are just so awesome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm class of 2008. I was an advisee of Elizabeth. I'm going to read something that I wrote. It's really short. I didn't write most of it, but you'll see. The last book I read as a student at St. Andrews was a gift from my advisor, Elizabeth Roach. It was To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I write for a living, but I need to rely on others to express how I feel because the emotions are too big, and I've spent most of this crying. I'd like to read a short passage from the book. This is a dinner scene organized by the main character, Mrs. Ramsey. Now all the candles were lit up and the faces on both sides of the table were brought nearer by the candlelight. Some change at once went through all of them, as if this had really happened and they were all conscious of making a party together in a hollow on an island. Nothing need be said, nothing could be said. There it was all around them. It partook, she felt, carefully helping Mr. Banks to a specially tender piece of eternity, as she had already felt about something different once before that afternoon. There is a coherence in things, a stability. Something, she meant, is immune from change and shines out. She glanced at the window with its ripple of reflected lights, in the face of the flowing, the fleeting, the spectral, like a ruby, so that again tonight she had the feeling she had once today already of peace, of rest. Of such moments, she thought, the thing is made that endures. The thing is made that endures. This line always stuck with me. This thing, what is it? Woolf doesn't really say. Virginia Woolf. It hangs over the scene like candlelight. But I know this thing because of Elizabeth and Tad Roach and the community that they created at St. Andrews. I felt it every time I walked through the Roach's door. I felt it every time Mrs. Roach, my advisor, treated me, a 17-year-old so unsure of herself, with respect, acceptance, and the encouragement to honor my own intellect and speak my own feelings. I saw it and often marveled at it in the way Elizabeth and Tad could draw together an entire campus in moments of celebration, empathy, curiosity, and compassion. I still feel it all these years later, and I am so grateful to you. I think that's amazing. Later on in the book, in Mrs. Ramsey's dinner party, one of the guests asks, but how long do you think it'll last? If this is a question about your years at St. Andrews, Tad and Elizabeth, we have one answer in the later pages of the novel. The great revelation, quote, perhaps never did come. Instead, there were little daily miracles, illuminations, matches struck unexpectedly in the dark. Here was one. Mrs. Ramsey bringing them together, Mrs. Ramsey saying, life stands still here, Mrs. Ramsey making of the moment something permanent. Mrs. Ramsey, she repeated, she owed it all to her. Thank you so much. We owe it all to you. And I'm clearly having trouble expressing myself, but I'm so grateful to you both. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Bernice, we're having a little trouble with Stacy's audio, and I don't know if between you and Michael, we can make sure she gets to speak.
I am looking at it right now.
It's so good.
I'd tell her to run over to Tad and Elizabeth's classroom and speak from there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my computer just crashed. This is terrible, but I am going to persist on anyway. I don't know what just took place, but okay, here we go. And I can't see Tad and Elizabeth as I'm saying this, but I love you guys so much. And there is no way that I could have written anything to say. I am so honored that I was asked to be here to present to you. And there's no way that I can wrap up everything that you have meant to me. Now, can y'all still hear me? Because Will looks frozen. Okay, I just want to make sure. What I do want to say is that Elizabeth, you gave me the most beautiful gift last Friday when you delivered that graduation speech. When I thought about what I would do to honor both you and Tad, right? I thought about this song because 40 years ago, I felt like Dorothy, not Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz, but Dorothy from The Wiz. I felt like Dorothy from The Wiz. And you saw that and you allowed me to become part of your family. And just as you have done for so many others that have come after me, I will forever and eternally be grateful. So I sing this song because when I think of you, I think of home, because you allowed St. Andrews to become a home for all of us. You allowed St. Andrews to just open its doors. And so what I want to say most to you right now is that I am grateful that even though St. Andrews will always be a home to us, for me personally, I know that wherever you are, I have a home because you carry me in your heart everywhere you go. I don't know what this is going to sound like singing over my phone. I don't know what y'all can hear, but I am going to do my best right now. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home. I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. Wind that makes the tall grass bend into leaning. Suddenly the raindrops that fall, they have a meaning. Sprinkling the sea makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I had some direction. It sure would be nice to be back at home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time in my life to grow up. Time be my friend. Let me start again. Suddenly my world's gone and changed its face, but I still know where I'm going. I have had my mind spun around in space, yet I've watched it growing. And oh, if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to know if we should believe in the things that we see. Tell us, should we try to stay or should we run away? Or would it be better just to let things be? Living here in this grand world might be a fantasy, but it's taught me to love. So it's real, real, real to me, and I've learned we must look inside our hearts to find a world full of love, like yours, like mine, like home. I love you with all my heart.
I think there were moments, Stacy, when you actually sang past the boundaries of your small screen there and ripped into all of our hearts. It was just spectacular, and what a crescendo for this amazing evening. I told you, Tad and Elizabeth, that you didn't have to say anything, but I'm happy to let you have the final word. I just want to thank all the participants. I want to encourage everybody to drink a lot of water because there have been a lot of tears and you all need to rehydrate as fast as possible. But thank you all for being here. It was a tremendous evening. And Tad and Elizabeth, you can send us off to our sleeps.
Yeah, so we are so grateful to all of you for being here tonight. It was absolutely amazing to see everyone and to hear all those amazing words. And we're gonna try to figure out ways to write something back to all of you for all the love that you shared. I'll just say one thing. Jenny Kern mentioned that in guess 1981, right? So 1981 was this moment where I remember I was driving into Middletown. Jenny, Andy, Kelly were in my car, and I said something like, I just said, I'm gonna go to law school and I'll be leaving St. Andrews next year. And I do remember Jenny and Andy telling me that I wasn't actually going to do that, that was not going to happen. And the best way I can describe what's happened over these 42 years is we decided to stay for all of you. And that decision was the best decision in our lives because it introduced us to this life and this community, all the people who have meant so much to us. My sounds terrible. So we just want to express our love for you, how proud we are of the leaders you are, and how much it is important that all of us continue to do the good work for peace and social justice and love in this world. And you know, as I look at the screen, this is the group that we want to work with for the rest of our lives. So we're going to take a really, really short break at the end of all this, and then we're going to get back to work, and we're going to be calling all of you and asking how we can work together to make this country and this world a better place. But we're so proud of you. We love you. And we cherish this time together. And you all have to come. You have to promise me tonight you're going to come to this party that we're going to have a year from now. You've got to come. We have to see you in June 2022. All right? You've got to be there. You've got to be there. Suli, you've got to make the trip. And
I'll be there.
I don't know if Eric went to bed, but Eric's got to be there. All my amazing musicians and singers, we want to hear you perform. And we just want to be there and express our love and appreciation for all that you've meant to us in our lives. And tomorrow's my last day with students. I have one more talk that I'm going to give at Engelhard. You've given me a lot to talk about, so I might talk a really long time, which will, I'm sure, please them to no end on their last day of St. Andrews. But again, thank you for this incredible night. I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
My heart is so full. I'm so emotional. Thank you for tonight. What an amazing gift. Thank you mostly for 40 years of just an amazing life it's been to have you all in our family, and it really has been a family, so that's why it's not going to end. And so many stories and memories and love and friendship. You've given us so much, and yeah, we have a lot left in us, we hope, knock on wood, and we're ready to be there with you and for you and beside you, whatever comes next. So we're excited about that, and you are so deep in our spirits, in our hearts. So just so much love to all of you, and thank you for this, staying on this call for 3 hours. My goodness, incredible. But we want to celebrate with all of you in person next year. We can't wait for that. And we will have a lot of Team Elizabeths there. So we will be victorious next year again. And yeah, I'll see you on the dance floor.
So thank you all. A tremendous night for St. Andrews. Thank you, Tad and Elizabeth, for all of this. And everybody drink some water and get some sleep. And we start the continued battle for justice and love and everything that you fought for bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you all.
We love you. Take care.
I love you so much.
Love you.
Love you back.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, love you.
Great work, everybody.
Thank you, Tad and Elizabeth.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
making
Rob.
it happen.
So much. Peter, thank you for the
everybody.
song.
Bye.
Ashley, thank
Oh,
you.
my pleasure. Great to see you guys. Love you
Robert,
so much.
Ed, Gary,
Bye.
Ruby, Laura, Gail, thank you. Emer,
Thank you
Beth,
so much.
Steve.
Thank you.
Lois, I have the picture.
You no, we don't. No, we don't have the picture.
Why I sent it to you.
I have
That's why I couldn't find it.
I have it. You sent it to-
I got rid of it.
Thank you, guys.
It's in the next magazine.
Oh,
I cannot tell you how long I looked for it today.
I'm
I was
glad
in
you
the attic.
find it.
Okay, love you guys.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you. Wilbur, thank you so much.
Thanks, Will.
Great work. Great evening.
It was amazing. Thank you so much. Steve, thank you.
Hey, Ted, it was great. Hope you didn't mind me telling the Annie story.
Not at all. Are you kidding?
Well, I tried to attribute it. I mean, Elizabeth has socialized it, so I thought I would tell them.
Absolutely. Perfect.
It's great.
I was affirming your inclination, which is true. But I
I
told
was
you
not
there's
at
no
all
question.
sure.
Well, there's no
I'm
question.
forever grateful. So
Annie's forever grateful too.
And Elizabeth, the fact that she went to Wesleyan is just icing on the frigging cake.
so good. So good.
Okay, I love you too. You're
you.
absolutely, as a leadership team, it's quite remarkable what you've done. I would say legendary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch soon. I'll be in touch
On
soon.
the civil rights, on the social justice.
Yes, on the
racial-
Cheryl. Take
yeah,
care.
yeah. So, on to Cheryl. Yeah.
Yes.
Baltimore.
All right.
Yep, she's looking forward to it.
All right.
Love you
Take
too.
care.
You're
All
the
right.
best.
Bernice,
Take care.
thank you.